There were 27 in between.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start. Good evening, friends. This is Ziauddin. I'm based in Hyderabad. I'm associated with Maulana Azad National Urdu University. Three friends of us, Mr. Laik Ahmed Khan, Mr. S.K. Masood, three of us have been thinking of having a broader discussion in the area which is concerning to many of us and the entire country. And this discussion has brought us in a period when there is a complete lockdown and we are not able to have any face-to-face interaction or seminar or dialogue at any forum. But then webinar is becoming very important. And we thought without delaying, we should start and launch this event. We have named this program Democracy Dialogue. There is a small portal. We are working over this. What I'm trying to just briefly inform you of talks in the next 2-3 weeks before lockdown is over, or we are not sure about the lockdown period, but then we'll be having this kind of activities, which is completely academic or semi-academic, but going to be very, very broad and interdisciplinary to all of us. There are people who are getting connected and we will be participant panelists from not only from India, but also from overseas, different countries who have concerns and to talk about various issues in India. Let me introduce you to many. There is hardly anyone of us who are not aware about the work and stature of Professor Kancha Ilaiah. And now Professor Kancha Ilaiah is Professor Kancha Ilaiah Shepherd, which he has named very consciously in 2016, giving a very rational elaboration about his caste identity in the name. Professor Kancha Ilaiah has served in very prestigious Osmania University in the Department of Political Science for quite long period of time. He also served as director at one of the prestigious center in Maulana Azad National Urdu University. And then that is very important to see that his writings, his work, and then kind of activities he has proved through his autobiographies, the writings which is available in the public domain. He is not only an icon for the people who work on Dalit Bahujan, but he is also important for many of us, for the minorities, for the Adivasis who are working in this area. So I welcome sir to you for this first dialogue series, and it is important that we listen you. Please proceed for the talk.
Thank you, Chair, for this initiation on democracy and dialogue. At a time when we are all locked down in the massive attack of coronavirus, which has shaken the whole world more than the Second World War or earlier pandemics that have come about onto the globe, because whether it was First World War or Second World War, they attacked only a certain part of the globe, particularly Europe, and the earlier pandemics attacked parts of the globes in different contexts. Take, for example, the 1897 bubonic plague, which has killed 1 crore, that is 10 million people in India alone, and 2 more million people in China, Hong Kong, and some of the Southeast Asian countries. And the same plague, over a period of time, traveled to Spain, which has become the Spanish plague. The estimates now are that in that plague in 1918, about 500 million people died. But at no point of time the whole world was attacked by a pandemic without any medical treatment available for it and without any vaccine already made to cure it. Therefore, the whole world is either on lockdown or semi-lockdown. And this virus, as you all know, was born in, the theory goes that in the wet market of China. Even the 1897 pandemic was also born in Yunnan and came via ports. And this virus came via aeroplanes in the globalized context, spread all countries. And since we are dealing with democracy and facing a crisis like the COVID pandemic, India, of course, is one largest country with the largest democracy, lockdown, with various social forces. The biggest crisis is for the labor. The rough estimates of Indian agrarian, non-agrarian, unorganized labor constitutes about 500 million people. And they were all locked down with just 5 hours notice. And we have seen their fate of walking for hundreds of miles and not reaching anywhere, on the way starving, people dying and so on, no food, no water, whatever. And we have Dalits, tribals, with lockdown, their economies were completely caught unaware. And we have minorities who particularly take, for example, Muslims who mostly live in urban slums. And home quarantine for them, for many of these people, is a difficult process because they live in slums, small houses. Sometimes 8, 9, 10 people live in a small one-room tenement. And we are seeing the fate of people in Dharavi, Mumbai slum. Now, in any case, the global theoretical assumption seems to say that democracies are struggling a lot to contain the coronavirus. There is one broad spectrum of understanding that the socialist stream, though there is a lot of controversy about Chinese way of handling, but whether it is the Koreans or the Cubans, and Kerala in India, with similar minorities, similar situations, with advanced preparedness, seems to have handled far better than many major countries in the world. Today, one assessment says that for 1 crore, in Kerala, only 1 person died. In whole of India, 5 persons died. And in various countries, in America, for 1 crore people, that is 10 million people, about 4,000 people died. Now, some of the African countries and Middle Eastern countries are really struggling with it because there are dictatorships, there are monarchical states, and there is no dialogue. Now, in all this, one theoretical assumption that comes is that for the first time in the history of religious structures, from the days of forming of Buddhism in 6th century BC to the present, where Christianity came in, Hinduism formed its own structure by now, Islam is in 56 countries. In all this, for the first time, all religious institutions were locked up. And people began to think, even laymen, men and women, that protection, though belief in God or Allah or Buddha for Buddhists or Ishwar for Hindus, whatever, to face a pandemic like this, we need to depend more on medical science and social sciences and democracy, democratic debate. This is coming out more and more clear. The world after globalization has pretended to have increased its scientific abilities, but what shocked today is that all advanced capitalist countries which privatized all their medical infrastructure collapsed like bunch of cords. Wherever there is a medical institutional base with a proper scientific temper and building of infrastructure with democratic discourses, things seems to be in control. And even after overcoming this virus, economies are going to collapse. It appears that future democracy and social justice, democracy and public sector economic expansion will play a bigger role. Things like minorities getting attacked, lower castes getting marginalized in lockdown periods, rumors spreading about communities, spreading about various failures of institutions, even rumors about China and so on are happening globally. But my understanding is, in 1831, when Hegel was writing a major thesis of negotiating between religion and science, he made a major statement, because we all must remember that Hegel died of plague in his 61st year. He himself was a victim of plague. And he said, state is the march of God on earth. So he recognized the role of God, but he also emphasized the role of state in pandemic situations. And state which is organized. Now, I think there is no second option for democracy in all the countries. Even China may face a crisis in future, that already conflicts are developing, that lack of freedom of expression, lack of freedom of press might have added, to the spread of this virus in different forms. So I, for one, who believes that, in India, minorities are facing a lot of new problems. Rumors are being spread, and Dalits, Adivasis, and lower OBCs have lost all life resources, but yet the right to vote and the right to freedom of expression, the right to mobilize numbers, data for media is playing a critical role in our lifetime. Therefore, I would request all of our members here that India, before this coronavirus, was going through a crisis of dismantling social sciences in universities, not spending money on medical sciences. India's GDP expenditure on medical science before the coronavirus was 1.5%. So now we are saying, luckily the virus has not come here with a loadedness, as they are saying. But if that were to come like US or any other place, we would have all died of fear and anxiety. So therefore, we have to expand the debate of science, social science. Of course, the role of religion will be there, but religion cannot control or cannot cure human diseases at a time of crisis. The democratic state, the state as an institution of protector in the 21st century will have to play a major role. It is in this context, my feeling is, we will have to fight globalization with Corona as an instrument now. Globalization has spread Corona quite quick, and it destroyed lives quite quick. And the air traveling class got affected for the first time in any other pandemic. You know, in 1897, for example, the top castes in India were not becoming doctors. The first doctor who died in 1897 pandemic was Mahatma Phule's adopted son called Dr. Yashwant Rao. And Savitribai Phule, his wife, serving the people, died in that pandemic. So there was no medical science at that time. The British colonialism did not establish huge medical institutions, though there was, even in Nizam state, there was some Unani, but there was no medical. My grandfather died in that plague itself, and people ran away into forests, taking their sheep, goat, and lived on fruits, roots, and meats. So this whole food cultural attack has affected our health immunity in the recent past. And my strong view is that multiple food cultures, strengthening scientific temper, secular values, freedom of expression, and democratic discourse is going to save us in a crisis like this. And we need to work as a global team, keeping on writing different points of views, different facts that are coming. It's not just one group, this group or that group, but the whole functioning of democracy. And most of the dictatorship nations, whether spiritually dictatorial or maybe even socialist proletariat dictatorship countries, will have to come into democracy as soon as possible in order to survive the future pandemics. And America, which had all the private medical health hospitals, people were running from India to save themselves to American hospitals, but American hospitals are now just collapsing and people are dying like flies. Therefore, our nationalism has to be around strengthening our own medical institutions. Our rich or poor should die in our own countries, in our own hospitals. And that Kerala is the model for me, at least. From top, its capital to village, there are properly established hospitals, minimum with 10-bed hospitals, which are curing coronavirus patients in the villages. And that is how we need to go. And we should take the example of our own great experiment by Kerala society, civil society, communities, minorities, state, political parties behaved with better coordination. And let us take a leaf from them, and we must globally appreciate and admire Kerala model, certainly not Gujarat model. Gujarat model has completely failed. With all its industrialists there, people are dying more and more in Gujarat and Mumbai. Why? What happened to industrialism? What happened to Modi model there? Failed, completely failed. And Kerala model succeeded. and it is a very good democracy. Once one party, next time another party comes, one may be communist, one may be Congress or whatever, but civil society remained democratic and health system remained. Scientific temper of all communities, including Muslims, Christians, tribals, Dalits, there are more scientifically tempered than any other state communities. Let us praise Kerala on this platform and ask all other states to emulate them and ask the center to follow the Kerala model and save the people and treat everybody equal and stop rumor mongering about minorities or this community or that community in this, virus war. It is much bigger than atom bomb on the world. So whole world is in the death trap. Let us fight it as a united democratic force. Thank you. We can now discuss. You can ask questions or comments. Thank you. Yeah, Jia? Hello? Jia?
Now we will have questions from the people here. There is already a question which I can read for your convenience, sir.
Yeah.
One by one we will have questions. There's one by Nisha. She writes, how do you think social distancing and the issue of caste in this crisis of pandemic bringing newer meanings?
Well, Nisha, I gave a statement, not even an article, saying that we should use only the phrase called disease distancing, but not social distancing. After a lot of debate in the world by various minorities, discriminated groups, blacks in America, the UN, the World Health Organization, first somehow wrongly used social distancing, but later on they changed it to physical distancing. Even physical distancing in an untouchable society for 3,000 years is not an appropriate terminology. I would rather prefer we should propagate disease distancing. Once the disease is gone, we should hug each other, because there is a right-wing propaganda that caste system has proved to be right. Namaste is better form than shaking hands or hugging each other. Through this means they were condemning certain communities' social habits of embracing each other or shaking hands. Psychologists world over are saying this whole distancing itself will have a huge problem afterwards. Unless society lives in harmony, engagement, parents cannot distance children for a long time. The parental-children relationship would destroy. And student-teacher relationship would destroy with this kind of distancing. So we need to use just disease distancing, not social distancing.
Yeah. Can you unmute everyone's mic, please? There are two questions. I'll quickly, if you can read, or I'll read out, sir.
Yeah.
And we'll also ask you directly.
Yeah.
One is by Mutharasan. India has slipped by 2 places in Global Press Freedom Index in 2019 and slipped by 10 places in World Democracy Index in 2020. How do you see these indexes where India is hitting to? If you allow, I can add another question. Do you think the present government at the center would go for more public expenditure in the context of privatization of district hospitals on PPP models?
Well, the last question first. I just wrote an article in The Citizen saying that we should immediately ask for nationalization of hospitals. Those hospitals which have more than 50 beds. Because what happened when we clapped on 22nd March for doctors, we did not clap for doctors of private hospitals who are sitting like us in their homes, nor for the private hospitals which closed down and no treatment for the COVID patients. So Spain, which had 100% private sector hospital system, collapsed. Now it has nationalized. In fact, there is a view that Prime Minister has taken a quick decision about demonetization or locking down, but both of them have all kinds of impacts. If we can take a decision like Indira Gandhi, bank nationalization, at this time, nationalization of big hospitals, that should be our cry from tomorrow, because I could see already a lot of pro-right-wing economists are saying, no, we should not allow license Raj to come back. No, we are not asking for the whole license Raj to come back, but the medical system has to be nationalized in a big way in India, and otherwise these private systems which are treating only slow death diseases for profit, like heart attack or other individual diseases. But India is a country of masses who need public. Telangana government has taken a step now. They have opened a new hospital with 150 beds with a government initiative. But my feeling is we should ask for Apollo chain or Yashoda chain or Care chain to be nationalized. That is a very, very significant step. The other question is democracy has been slipping on two counts. One, Indian democracy after CAA has slipped down in the global image, because no country can grant citizenship based on the issue of religion of citizens. Their work in a country, their status in a country, or their need in a country can be, but CAA has done that thing, and the entire globe reacted to that. Then came the Delhi riots. See, Corona first case was registered in India on January 30th in Kerala, when a medical student came back from China. But after that, February 24th, Prime Minister organized a massive rally for President of America. And that rally was not disease distance maintenance rally or physical distance, whatever it is. It was massive. Then massive communal riot came in. Then during that time, in the communal rights city, they have given visas from 30 to 40 countries to organize a meeting for their own friendly minority group. And people were allowed to travel, people were allowed to meet in a city of rioting and destruction. And that caused its own thing. So before that, we have several other problems. But now we must see, all kinds of assessments are taking place. Since the lockdown has given some positive marks to Modi government, and state governments have taken the initiative. We will have to wait and see afterwards how do they handle the hunger problem, labor problem, the economy problem, complete construction industry completely finished, and many industries will be closed. So we'll have to see what happens later. Is there some other small question? What is that? There is some other small question in between. I don't remember.
There's one by Abdul Rahim. Says that, what is your opinion about Gautam Naulakha and Anand Teltumbe and other during COVID-19?
Yeah, Naim, I already wrote an article in Outlook. It is absolutely undemocratic to arrest both of them on 14th April, on the day of Ambedkar 29th Jayanti. And, Gautam Naulakha was a former editor for some time of EPW. And this man, Anand Teltumde, was basically an academic. And both of them were implicated in all kinds of things. Unfortunately, Supreme Court, even in the lockdown period when they went back to Supreme Court to give relaxation, and Anand's two daughters wrote a letter, open letter, that at least till the lockdown period, my mother will suffer loneliness and depression. You extend the arrest. Unfortunately, Supreme Court did not agree with that. Now, this is a problem, individual rights linking up to the, I don't agree with complete agenda of the Maoist party. And armed struggle is not at all suitable to the present global economy and democracy and situation, because we all believe in Ambedkar Constitution and Ambedkar democracy. So that was a very, very unfortunate thing. We all need to work for their release.
There are two connected questions, sir. Jabir asked, under circumstances, can civil society create an example of dialogue with right-wing governance, inspired or despite differences through any viable mechanism? And second is from Arvinder Ansari. You have pointed we can collectively need to fight this disease, but what is happening, further polarization happening, how to counter it?
No, the question is, Indian civil society has not really become civil in the sense that ever since we started Ambedkarite Constitution and Nehruvian secular model, as time passed on, after partition of India, the communal regrouping has become more and more visible. Now, unfortunately, take for example the Muslim issue vis-a-vis the right-wing Hindutva force. I was surprised in all this discussion when this Nizamuddin conference, Tablighi Jamaat issue came. See, for example, in Hinduism, there is no monolithic thing. And this organization is given every permission by a BJP Home Ministry. And why it seems to be a very friendly organization for BJP and the right-wing forces. I don't think all Muslims should own that organization. And its cultural traits are not at all secular in my view, not at all scientific and progressive. Therefore, whether this religion or that religion in America, in Europe, several church pastors were arrested simply because they were not willing to close down the churches. So if democracy and pandemics demand, like what Hegel said, a state must be treated as march of God on earth. I think this kind of organizations which don't understand the role of science, don't study signals in the world, and keep on doing their very, very primitive kind of things, civil society does not form civil. Therefore, we all must launch a massive campaign of expanding our non-religious social science thought building. Every time bringing in religion into social science does not help. That's what Machiavelli fought against Christian fundamentalism. Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, up to Karl Marx. People had to fight certain tendencies of religion, not that they are opposed to their notion of God. And I think the Islamic world should have contributed massive dose of scientific thought for the last 200-300 years, which unfortunately did not. A culture of 56 nations locking itself in the non-democratic traditions and non-scientific traditions has created problem for us, and that is being used by the Hindutva kind of fundamentalists here. Even in the Buddhist world, which is mostly socialist in that realm, I think a lot of new debate has to take place. A lot of secular discourse has to take place. And that is when world will have to have a new advantage. Therefore, we need to read Ambedkar, Nehru, Maulana Azad, other political thinkers more seriously, linking up to medical science now.
Subham is asking, I want to ask about Supreme Court's recent decision of not allowing 100% ST reservation, which has undermined 5th schedule. The judges in the same judgment has asked the government to look into the creamy layer for SC/ST reservations. How do you look at the Brahminical thought in higher judiciary?
Well, see, any institution will be a replica of the elite communities that got into it historically. Now, there was a time when we were debating de-Brahmanizing all institutions with an idea of dignity of labor and production as the centrality of discourse. Unfortunately, the Brahminic values spread across all religions in India. Of course, that is more centrally located in Hindu structure, no doubt. But even in Islam, there is no Indian Muslims, there's a lot of Brahminic tendency, whether they are judiciary, whether academic. Now I'm working on a book on Shudras. The entire Shudra community, which constitutes 60% of population, does not exist in any central universities, including Jat, Gujar, Patels. So this whole reservation issue will come up. My point is, we need English medium education in government schools from LKG to 12th and abolition of private school system, and we don't want reservation. If the judiciary, already in Andhra Pradesh, when government thought of introducing complete English medium, Andhra Pradesh judiciary struck it down, but they are going to Supreme Court. The masses, Dalits, Adivasis are sitting, even in Corona lockdown, on hunger strike in homes for English medium education. I think all communities should ask for one medium, one syllabus, along with their own other language subjects across the country. After 30-40 years, we will fight for removal of reservation. They don't have to talk about reservation. That is my stand.
Syed Muhammad is asking, since social distancing is practiced by the privileged because they have access to a space which is a privilege, what should those from the weaker sections do, and how must they practice distancing when they have no access to a space? what should the role of the state be vis-a-vis space as a privilege, and how the state and individual will be dealing with those terminologies, where like among the Adivasis or tribals or in Dakkani?
No, see, the question is, when I sent an article and statement to very progressive media also, they said, no, this is not the term used by Indian government. It came from World Health Organization. The World Health Organization people said that it came from China. Now the question is, each society has its own gradedness, its own discrimination. For example, take the culture of Hindu society, where sitting together, eating together is not possible. Untouchability of common dining is there. Whereas in Islamic communities, there was no concept of jutan. There is no concept of what we call engili in Telugu. You eat from one plate. But now, during Corona times, it is said that you should not do this, and therefore you distance for some time for disease containment. So therefore, what I would think is, ordinary masses do not know. Telugu channels are using, Hindi channels are using, Urdu channels are using social distancing. Ordinary masses don't know this concept, the implications of this. It is we need to put an alternative. Just criticizing does not help. You have to give alternative concepts. That's where I came up with disease distancing. But it doesn't become popular, no, because unless some established state or WL, World Health Organization or something uses. So we need to work on these things. This is going to have a very long-term negative impact on India.
Yeah, there is a question by Harshal Deshpande. How do you see the situation due to pandemic being utilized by the right-wing fascist as a way of revival of caste-based discrimination against Dalits, Adivasis, and in many recent cases as reason of social boycott of Muslims in various parts of the country? And also how Muslims are getting discriminated under the garb of social distancing?
No, my feeling is the coronavirus attacking the whole world at one go. And lockdowns coming at one go, including the lockdowns of the religious thinking. There is a sudden upsurge, even among the women, illiterate women, who used to be around Babas, who used to be around, constantly going and doing this, that, and even in very organized congregative religions like Christianity and Islam, and not so congregative of Buddhism. I think post-corona, role of religion will come down. All fundamentalists will get weakened. That is one good thing corona has done to the world. And people don't believe all this rubbish. They will believe more and more medicine and doctor. Therefore, I said now God or Allah or Ishwar lives with the Safai soldiers, not in temples, masjids, or churches. God is not there. God is with Safai soldiers, God is with doctors, God is in the hospitals. So therefore, the trend is going to change. More scientific thinking is going to advance in the world, in all countries. Right-wing days will come to an end with corona. That is my feeling.
There is a question by Sangmitra Acharya. Thank you, Professor Ilaiah, for your enlightenment thoughts. Given that it was only public sector institutions, healthcare as well as aviation came to the rescue of people affected by pandemic. In that light, nationalization of hospitals appears to be viable. But how will it be tackled in the light of drug industry driven healthcare prevalent globally? And
So, yeah, see, you see this, there's a major shift happening in the world now. All Euro-American countries were depending for importing drugs from China. Now suddenly, they realize that they cannot sustain this for long. Now they'll have to produce their own drugs. India was depending more on the private pharmaceutical companies. But in future, the state has to run some significant pharmaceutical companies. At least Corona seems to be telling us that vaccine is going to be a very major medical process of life in future. Even if you want to climb into aeroplane, they will ask whether you have Corona vaccine for a few years to go. So therefore, Obama said before he relinquished his office that more and more pandemic diseases are likely to come. That's what scientists are telling me. And the world needs to be prepared because of the huge environmental changes that are coming and the human-animal, other species interactions are changing. Therefore, my feeling is that even in pharmaceutical industries, in India, there's a huge private sector pharmaceutical industry producing for other countries because poor masses don't get medicine in India. Now in future, the state has to spend at least 6% of our GDP on health and drugs in order to sustain, survive pandemics. So they won't allow, they don't do it. BJP kind of people don't accept that. But we will have to push them, more writing, more public discourses, and more activism will have to change this whole mentality because all the pro-right-wing economies are disinvestment, privatization, no license Raj, all this kind of stuff. We need to oppose them. We need to fight them.
there is a question that what is going to be the future economic globalization post-COVID? And second, how do you see, as you discuss about the globalization issue and a motivating factor behind rapid spread of COVID-19, but is there no other way to deal with it globally with the international cooperation rather than questioning globalization? This two sides of the same picture.
No, it looks like, we all thought smallpox, for example, if you see my face, I survived a very bad smallpox when I was 6 months old. My brother also had very massive smallpox. And many of our families survived after many people death, plague of 1897. But we never thought in this kind of development of science, medicine, hospital system, a virus cannot play with our lives. But suddenly, even such a massive globalized world collapsed. Now that means nature has more power than all the science that we have discovered so far. Marx said once that we know only a small particle of science now, like a grain of sand on the sea beach. It looks like that globalization has not done much advancement in order to contain. On the contrary, we destroyed the environment. Within 2 months of lockdown, aeroplanes putting down, there are assessments that 35% of the global air got purified. And seawater is cleaner now. Skies are cleaner now. Then why do we need so much of air travel? After all, we can have conferences like this instead of traveling from one place to another place. So a lot of restructuring may happen, and globalization will draw a lot of debate and discourse, and we can't predict how it will go, but certainly there will be a lot of changes. Socialist thought seems to be picking up a positive thread in many corners of capitalist countries. So let us see what happens. We can't predict now, but there is a lot of new discourse coming onto the global map in the post-corona world.
Sumi is asking a slightly different question, which is very important in these days. How do you see the impact of COVID-19 on the mental health of the people during this period?
No, it is a lot of, I am reading a lot of psychological dimensions, very well equipped psychologists talking about. This lockdown period is breaking down many structures, though the whole role of mobile and soft phones have come down. People are talking at home, but at the same time, sudden lockdown at home has created a lot of mental crisis. So we don't know. We have never seen, world never seen such a situation before. So a lot of positive, negative writings are coming, assessments are coming. But my feeling is agrarian sector may pick up a lot in future, and quite a bit of deurbanization might take place because immediately urban jobs will be lost. Now that may have some positive impact. And I don't know what kind of impact it will have on education, on travel. All these are just in the pipeline kind of discourses. I'm not very sure what direction it will take.
This again, but I just wanted more clarification for your opinion about how fake news can be countered when it was used by the Jamaat as a tool to propagate against one community. This may happen with the various other communities, deprived communities in India. So do you see in democratic procedure how to counter those propagandas?
No, one major danger that came with this for Muslim minorities who are living in various parts of the world, even in the villages, is that a lot of Muslims sell fruits on carts and small shops, mutton, chicken, eggs, and so on. So even in the villages, people, I'm told, are not buying from them. And they are also not being allowed to buy from other shops and interact. It's a massive dose of this has gone through, not just by communal forces, but the whole media talked about it as if there was some deliberate spreading of the virus happened from Delhi Jamaat meet. And there was no proper counter for that. And the community leadership should have done that. Now, this is a major challenge for the poor. Their livelihoods are affected, their food resources affected. Rumors for example, I saw even on Telugu TV in Rajasthan, on one house rooftop, It is a bungalow that in the plastic bag, some spit was put and thrown. So it was rumored that minority communities to spread virus did this. But later on they investigated. No, it was some children who played there, threw some water-like stuff there. So these are the things that happen because once a communal dimension is given, and this is also happening in Saudi Arabia now. And Saudi Arabia, a number of people are losing jobs for their fake news spreading or writing Facebook messages and so on. I think it is spreading globally against each other. So states must rectify this, governing agencies must rectify this, communities must put out. See, there is no point in defending very primitive organizational structures which are unscientific in belief. My feeling is that corona kind of virus needs scientific thinking, progressive approach, uniform body language, uniform body appearance should be more encouraging than religious specific body formations or body appearances. So therefore, we need to do this on more and more writing. Each community has to produce creative thinkers, and there will be reaction from conservatives, but one has to face that.
There are a couple of questions. I'll make it one.
Yeah.
Afroz, Salik, and others, they're asking that you have civil society and certain political parties coming together, not only in India, but across the world, where largely we see the news on where you have democratic procedure functioning properly. But in India, we have slightly different institutions, which is not in other countries. For example, about caste and religion is becoming very important hurdle in the process of countering the COVID-19. So do you see any major role of the civil society to engage in this lockdown period and try to minimize the infection?
No, this problem is a long-term problem. Pandemics create new situations, and pandemics create environment of rumors. Pandemics, for example, even in the West during the Second World War time, lot of rumors on enemy countries, enemy societies, for example, Jews or others were being spread. So what we need to do now is, though there are lots of problems in India, luckily India has experienced democracy with very good constitution. And we have various traditions, though the right wing is controlling the state system now, but we have still a very strong media, which keeps on putting out multiple voices. So we need to strengthen, in my view, Ambedkar and Nehruvian kind of secular constitutional values and counter these casteist and communal civil societal problems. Now, virus is a danger that destroys lives of more poor people quite quickly. But this virus came from the rich, and they started dying first. And then for the first time, the rich could not be saved in the rich hospitals. They had to go to same government hospital. Take that example of that famous singer who had to stay in a government hospital in Lucknow She was every day complaining that, hospital is not clean and I don't get good food. And so doctor told her there, look, you are not living in 5-star hotel. This is hospital for everybody. You will get same thing as any other patient gets. You have to survive here, get cured here and get out. There's no other way. She had to live through. So the pandemic is teaching a different lesson to rich. The rich may be this religion, that religion, whatever. But we are living in a world 1% rich with 220 rooms, houses, with 5 people living there and 25 people in one room in the lockdown period, and when we were propagating physical distance or disease distance, what kind of society we are living? So we need to fight that. And unfortunately, not much class and rich poor debate comes from even the Muslim world. There's no debate at all. I was trying to find out news from what is happening in Saudi Arabia, what is happening in Muslim countries. Hardly anything comes out. And like China, not much is coming out from there. So from Europe, America, yes, every day, Trump is saying something, Republicans are saying something. I see CNN, I see Al Jazeera, I see BBC. The fight is, I don't see any news about these countries also. Therefore, we need to handle all this from a larger context. The whole world has to change now.
One important questions I can club 3-4 are there. Do you think any possibility of civil society having people from SC, ST and minorities especially to come together and also try to come out of the social stigma which is coming down into their life due to lockdown? And
no, see what happened in India
is going to create a lot of problem to these largely. Do you advise or feel that there is a need to come together, and also in the condition where you have complete lockdown?
No, civil society formation gets better and better with a rational view. This whole idea from the days of Kant, Immanuel Kant, to Hegel. Hegel was a pastor, became a philosopher, wrote a book on Jesus Christ, his life, but said reason should play the fundamental role. If in India, the Dalits, the tribals, the Shudras and backwards and minorities, no, when we are talking minorities also, no Dalit, OBC, Shudra, we are all not in the same ideological frame, but if somebody is a communal, even in this, it doesn't help. The spiritual domain has to be relegated to the private life in future. And that is where Kerala should be a model for all of us. Since Kerala civil society, because I interact with all kinds of communities in Kerala, Dalits, backward classes, Muslims, and lots of interactions, cultural engagements are happening there. Food culture happened to be the same. So therefore, just saying minority, Dalit, OBC, and the Shudra, no, for example, Jats, Gujar, Patels, and the backward classes went along with Narendra Modi once they said that, OBC Prime Minister is coming to becoming, OBC man is becoming Prime Minister. So that was the urge for OBCs to come. They didn't see the religious dimension. So therefore, these problems are there. We will have to create a rational, secular. Those spiritual systems will be in society. As Francis Fukuyama was talking about, there is not going to be end of history. There is not going to be end of religion. But it should be a beginning of rational, secular, civil societal formation by people of all religions. Then I think we'll form a civil society. Otherwise, no, if we just talk only about Gramsci kind of vague civil society without dealing with religion and so on, it doesn't work. So Kerala would be a better model for me. Let us debate around that. Let us see.
We'll take up last question. There are many questions, but I'll take one more question. The time is over, sir.
Yeah.
It is about, Ashwarya is asking, would you please throw some light on how the rise in domestic violence and child abuse amidst the corona pandemic has affected women and specifically Bahujan community, and how the government should deal this?
Well, see, if you read my book, Why I'm Not a Hindu, I said that wife beating has been there quite a lot among the working communities. And wife beating has been there in all communities, but in those communities, in the villages, it comes out. Wives comes running out into the street from home and proclaim that her husband is beating her and something has to be done. So a lot of reports are coming that a lot of wife beating is happening, children are suffering in the locked up period, wife and husband don't properly cooperate with each other because now outside food is not available. These things need to be carefully studied, and there should be counseling centers on, let us say, on Zooms like this. People have to locate which house is facing this, and even police can inquire into certain brutal violences. So we will know only after the lockdown is over what kind of brutalities happened, because now the entire media is around COVID, around lockdowns and problems. Let us see what will happen. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
It was really very elaborative and informative. We wanted to have, and we are privileged to have you on this forum to begin the first talk by Democracy Dialogue. This is a forum which is going to be one of the important public space in Hyderabad, similar to some of the other platform we have. And the purpose was that Hyderabad is very dynamic and vibrant city, which can provide more and more liberal space to talk from people across the corner. And you have given this platform a major beginning. We look forward for your continuous support and guidance. Thank you so much from the team.
Yes. We'll all the time we'll meet. When others are speaking, I will be there on your team. So thank you very much for organizing this. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Friends, sorry that I could mix up some of the questions to minimize the time, and because you have limited time on Zoom. Let me, before we end, announce the next webinar we are going to have by Srinivas Kodali. Srinivas will be his expertise in the area. He will be talking about developing trajectories of state surveillance in the current crisis. Coming Sunday, we will have this. We'll send the link and details for the same, possibly 8 o'clock in the evening, so that everyone can join. I again thank all the participants. We have people from overseas across the country, and we look forward for your continuous interaction engagement. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Yeah.
Right.